This is one of the best things I've seen all week. Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, Brian Greene, who's himself a right-wing reporter, he's the one who asked the question during the explosive and horrific Oval Office meeting where Trump went crazy and Vance went crazy against Zelensky for an indiscernible reason. And he asked Brian Greene, amid this world conflict that's taking thousands of lives, Zelensky, why aren't you wearing a suit? It's so disrespectful. And he then goes on a BBC outlet, and Victoria Derbyshire takes him to task very calmly, leading to Glenn just starting to shout. But what he's shouting is the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard. Okay, that's a big setup. Get ready. In this clip, they'll remind you of what it was that Brian Greene said to Zelensky. Again, Brian Greene being the significant other of Marjorie Taylor Greene and himself a right-wing reporter. And where this leads, I was shocked. I was truly shocked. If you appreciate the show, please do click the subscribe button. Here we go, Victoria.
And do you think it did come across as a snarky comment?
Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're the highest level in this country's office and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see if do you own a suit?
Oh, I'm sure it did. I know by the thousands and tens of thousands of comments I've gotten on social media, death threats, phone calls. I don't know how they got my number. I think the world took it as a snarky comment. That wasn't really my intention.
Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you for talking to us. Yep. I wonder if I could begin by asking you, on Friday...
Looks like he's having an allergic reaction to something. He's looking very, yeah.
Why, you asked President Zelensky, why don't you wear a suit?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. We have been covering, obviously, the events in Ukraine since it started. And I've been on the campaign trail with President Trump for many years. And as Americans get kind of engaged in what's going on, that was one of the questions that many Americans had, is why doesn't the president, Zelensky, wear a suit when he goes these very high level?
A lot of Americans are asking that, sure. By the way, I think my monitor over there is making him look more red and inflamed than he actually looks. So maybe what's coming through for y'all is not what I'm seeing on this monitor over there. But get ready, because Victoria Derbyshire brought the receipts on the Churchill example, and that's what sets Glenn off. But you need the context, so let's hear the rest of this part of the answer.
Meetings, whether it's in the U.S., whether it's over in Europe. And when you look at the several dignitaries that seem to have a level of respect for their office, I just asked the questions that many Americans were asking at home, and that's kind of what I've been doing for a while. So I didn't mean to come off as a snarky comment, although I do feel like when Zelensky got out of the car and met President Trump at the West Wing. That's
okay, so he goes on to justify it. He almost sounds apologetic, which is interesting. I think that's because he's on a different platform, because the right-wingers on the right-wing platforms are really hyped to cheer this on, and that's why he asked it. But what really cements the absurdity of that question and this MAGA obsession is what Victoria brings up here.
I mean, I'm sure somebody else has said this to you, but obviously when Winston Churchill went to see Roosevelt during the Second World War in the White House, he was wearing military fatigues. Was he showing disrespect?
Well, I wasn't alive then. I wasn't there to watch that.
You've got a view.
I'm not going to comment that. But what I'm saying is, if you guys are trying to get this, it's all about the wardrobe, and that's what I've been the biggest excuse. Why isn't why aren't we talking about peace? 2,700 men, Ukrainian men, die a day, and we're going to argue about, well, Winston Churchill was wearing military fatigues, and is that okay? Elon Musk wears, a T-shirt and a jacket and a hat and brings his kids, and, I don't know why this is still an argument. I really don't. If it means that much to you guys, then, congratulations. You guys just made a deal with Zelensky a few days ago, and...
So then he starts shouting about how we shouldn't be bringing this up. Well, what are you focused on the outfits for? Who cares? Brian Greene says. If you care about that, then fine, he says. But you brought it up, Brian. You're the one who asked Zelensky. Jaden, throw yourself up on screen. Okay. For a podcast listener, Jaden brought a little photograph of Marjorie along. Calm down. Marjorie's here, Brian. Jaden, why do you have your earpiece in your left ear like that? Is that your left ear or your right ear?
You wear yours in your right ear all the time. Why is it a deal?
Why are you talking about earpieces? We have so much going on, Jane. You're talking about earpieces? Really? What kind of priorities is that? Yeah, that's the equivalent of what Brian just did. You brought it up, Brian. I agree it's ridiculous. You would think that some world leaders, they just don't find it appropriate in wartime to be all fancied up. And so they're wearing more war-looking clothing, as Churchill did. And then you go, I'm not going to comment on that. Well, maybe you shouldn't comment on the thing you commented on then. Maybe if you don't want this to be the focus, as I don't either, you shouldn't try to make it the focus. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Hey, honey, are you cheating on me? No, what? Are you cheating on me? Why are you asking questions like that? Are we not supposed to trust each other? We're just going to question the fidelity of one another all the time? You brought it up, Brian. Wow. Now he's hopped up. Look at him.
He wore a tracksuit to meet your king there. Now, hopefully that wasn't offensive to you guys, but look, whatever.
Let me ask you about something that President Trump has said tonight. He has criticized on Truth.
Okay, and let's jump forward to the final clip here, where Victoria makes a great point. Everyone wants peace. We just want lasting peace.
President Zelensky being as tough as he gets, it can't be peace at any cost. It's got to be a sovereign Ukraine. It's got to be backed by US security guarantees, or else President Putin will be right back in there.
Well, we don't necessarily know that, because I think when President Trump gets involved with the deal, you see the absolute fear on the faces of people involved. So if this deal is done and there's no troops on the ground for security, kind of a backstop, if you will, Victoria, in all due respect, I think the world has seen a weak Joe Biden, and they have seen how the U.S. has not stood up to the adversaries in the world. So if President Trump makes a deal and says, you will not invade Ukraine, this thing is over, Victoria, they're not going to do it. We don't need to keep putting people and resources and spending money for people on the ground. It's over.
When Donald comes over and hangs out with me and Marjorie, and I bother him, and he says, go in the other room and stare at the corner, you're having a timeout. And I say, why? And he says, because I said so. I listen. And Putin will do the same. He will listen. Because Trump's word is like a father's. No, Brian, the issue is here that we've done this before. We've done the Putin, give us your word, you're not going to continue and we'll make concessions. Okay, fine, just stop there though. Okay, fine, just stop there. And then he violates the agreements. We've done it before. We've done it before. We've done it before. And despite your cultish worldview about Trump's power, giving his word or taking the word of Putin is not a viable long-term peace solution. And by the way, even to put it in terms that maybe Brian can understand more, once goody Trump leaves, then a weak Democrat might come in power and then Putin could do it. So Trump's not going to be in power forever unless that's what you want, which a lot of MAGA people are now saying they want him to have a third term. So maybe that's what Brian thinks. But eventually, the Big Macs will catch up to him. He won't be there forever, okay? And when that happens, even by using your paradigm, ultimately, we would need more than just the word of a notorious liar, Vladimir Putin. And so saying that we should focus on peace is like saying that we should breathe, obviously. But we have to make sure, unlike breathing, it's a little bit more complicated than just saying we should do it. And we have to bring forward a viable long-term solution, which does mean security guarantees for Ukraine in any potential deal. And that's all Zelensky said that set off pouty boy JD Vance and Trump. Share your thoughts in the comments.